Locations in CenterPoint describe the physical location that generates financial activity. For example, we have a profit center in our database called Biking Equipment and Sales, but we have several stores that sell that biking equipment. Okay, each store would be a separate location if we wanted to take a look at the revenue and expenditures for each store individually. Locations are optional in CenterPoint. If your management has some sort of need to define the use of locations, it can be added to your data at any time. And it allows for profit and loss comparison by location. Location groups are another additional feature of CenterPoint, and they provide an easy way to combine locations. So for example, if your organization had several locations throughout the entire country, you might want to be able to break down those locations by different regions, and those regions would then become location groups. To set up a location, we're going to go to Setup, Profit Centers, and Locations. And you can see here that we have several locations already created. To create a new one, I'm going to click the New button at the bottom of the screen. And that's going to take us to a screen that leads us to the ability to enter in an optional abbreviation. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we now have a new Texas store. So we're going to add the Texas store here. And after you've entered in an abbreviation and a name, then all you have to do is select the type. Now, most of your types are probably going to become business types of locations. So you could select that type and then right click and set it as a default. And then that'll be there and it'll be selected each time so that you don't have to select anything in that field. There's also an additional notes button at the bottom of the screen. The additional notes button allows you to put in notes about that location that you want to store with this location record. All you need to do is type in the notes there. If you wanted a timestamp with the notes, you can click timestamp and then type in the note. I'm going to delete out that timestamp and that note because I don't need one on mine, but it does allow for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Save. You can edit a location at any time by going ahead and highlighting the location and clicking Edit. You can change any of the fields within here, but just keep in mind that if you do change any of the information, so let's say you rename the Colorado store to something else, it will affect all previously entered in transactions to that location. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click Close out of there. Now to set up location groups, we're going to go to the same place. We're going to go to Setup and Profit Centers and Locations, but this time we're going to go ahead and set up a location group. Now, my database, rather than setting up regions as different location groups, I have both the corporate office and I have my stores. And I would like to see all the store activity grouped together and then the corporate activity listed separate. So I'm going to set up a group for each one of those. So I'm going to go ahead and make my first location group be stores. And I'm going to select my stores. And I'm going to add them to that group. And then I'm going to create another group called my corporate. Now I know I only have one location that is a member of that group, but if I'm going to do a side-by-side analysis of the corporate activity to the store activity, then I need to have a group for it since I set up a group for the store. So I'm going to go ahead and select the corporate, move it over to the right-hand side, and then go ahead and click Save. Now, unlike locations, location groups are not used in transactions. Locations are used in a transaction. So to show you an example of that, I'm going to enter in a utility bill in which we identify the expense by a particular location. To do that, I'm going to go into a vendor invoice. I'm going to go to Processes, Purchases, and we're going to enter in a vendor invoice. Okay, I'm going to choose the vendor as my Summit Utility Company, and this is for my electric and gas bill for my Colorado location. So as I go ahead and put in this bill, so I'm going to go ahead and say that the bill is for 256.98. And we're going to go ahead and choose this as electric and gas. Okay, now my profit center I've already added to this grid here. So I could go ahead and choose that this is the profit center of, well, I could add whichever profit center it's for. It could be for a number of profit centers. And actually, I'm probably going to break down this bill between a number of different profit centers. So I'm going to say that the first part, 123.45, oops, 123.45 is going to go to my biking profit center. Well, I don't have a field here for location currently, so I can't enter in the location on this line. There is a detail button here, and if you either land there with your cursor or you click on that detail button, you'll see that all of those additional details, such as profit centers and locations, are located here. And this is where I can go ahead and choose the Colorado store and click OK. Now, if I want that location to show on this grid here so that I don't have to click on the detail button, you can do that by right-clicking on any transaction screen, going to add or remove columns, and you can add the column for the location. Now, notice that these columns up here are the columns that have been added already, and they're in the order that they appear on the grid. Okay, so if I want to move this one up to those other added columns, I could use this button here and it moves it up next to them. And now I can use these up and down arrow buttons to position it to where I want it to be. And I would like the location to be right next to the profit center. So I'm going to move it up next to the profit center. So here you can see on that line, then we could see both the location and that. So I can continue going ahead and adding in this transaction. It's still going to be to electricity and gas, but maybe this portion of it goes to my skiing profit center and for the Colorado store. So each line can have different details and it could actually have different locations. When I'm done, I could go ahead and click save on that transaction. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click close out of there. Now you can also report by the different locations. So to show you that, I'm going to go ahead and open up an income statement. I'm going to go to reports. And on the favorites tab here, you can see that I've developed two favorites, one called income statement by location and one called income statement by location group. On many of the reports in CenterPoint, you have the ability to filter that report by a specific location. Okay, so I can pick a specific location. You could also pick a specific location group. That filter might not be here by default, so you could go to the more items at the bottom of the screen and you could add a filter for location group. So it would also let me filter activity by a particular location group. Okay, I didn't filter by either, I want all. And so I'm gonna go ahead and click preview on my report. So you can see here that I have an income statement and this first column is my total, but each column after that takes that total and it divides it and shows it to me by each one of my physical locations. Now, obviously there's nothing in my Texas location yet because I just set up that particular location. But you can see here the financial activity by group. The total of these columns should add this should equal this column over here. Okay, so that was by location, but I could go ahead and do the same thing by location group. So I took and configured this report to fill the columns with location groups instead of locations. And when I go ahead and preview this one, you can see that I took my two groups, my corporate location, and then all of my stores and put them in separate columns. And then this one here is the total of those items. Okay, so it did go ahead and do that. Now, I might have something that's unallocated here, and that's why these particular items aren't adding up. That just means that I have something unallocated. So I'd probably want to search that out and find out what revenue I've recorded that I didn't put to a specific location. I'm going to go ahead and close that report. And that goes ahead and is how you would use locations in transactions and how you can use them in reporting.